Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, November 22nd, 2017, day before Thanksgiving. All the Thanksgiving preparatory activity taking place behind me at the Kagro in the Morning World Headquarters, because we're cooking Thanksgiving breakfast for the world, everybody, and we're going to do a breakfast thing like Charlie. Did Charlie Brown do breakfast? No, he just did popcorn. Oh, he did toast. That's breakfast. That's a breakfast food. And it was the dog, anyway, mostly that helped. Anyhow, we're going to be getting ready for Thanksgiving, and we're doing the whole thing here, and so it'll be taking place right behind me, and you'll enjoy it. It'll make you feel like you're at home if you're on the road, and it will make you feel like running out into the middle of the road if you're at home, I guess, is a possibility. Anyway, it's a Wednesday show. We will not be able to get Joan McCarter to join us because she's got her own activities to take care of today. And we wish her a happy Thanksgiving. Of course, she'll be back with us, I hope, next Wednesday. Greg Dworkin's still scheduled to make an appearance. I don't know whether the cooking is going on in his kitchen. Maybe the laundry is possibly going on. We'll listen in a little bit on that and try. We can. The new game is we can try and guess what's in the laundry at the Dworkin household. How about that? That sounds like a fun thing to do. Anyway, even if we don't do that, the show is live right now, thanks to notice from Bill in Portland, Maine. Today, I'll be teaching you to stuff a turkey into the microwave. Okay, that's not a bad idea. I wish we could get that thing done. We will not get the golden brown hue of a turkey, obviously. But Thanksgiving is always an interesting time online to discover what the rest of you weirdos eat for Thanksgiving and how terrible it is. Everyone is now sharing that, and people are fighting about whether or not mac and cheese is an acceptable Thanksgiving side, and it's partially regional and partially cultural, and I don't like mac and cheese any time of year, but that's because I just don't like cheese. I think the Pilgrims hated cheese as well, and so I think any real American, I don't know. Let's say, excuse me, everybody, I have to answer my computer. I really just don't, at this point, want to tour the new Mac OS High Sierra. Thank you. Remind me tomorrow. It's Thanksgiving. That's fine. Okay. Well, lots going on today, and I'm sure we will round all of it up as soon as Greg is ready to roll. And, let's see. Okay. I've got the messages coming through. I think I've tried to set my Skype settings so that it doesn't ring with that amazing, loud, obnoxious tone when Greg or Armando call in. And like I said, they gave us the new updated Skype, and so it's a big mystery as to how you can turn all those things off. It's not immediately obvious. There's lots of buttons you can click to turn off notifications and everything. I don't want to not be notified that he's calling. I just don't want it to be loud. So I don't know. We'll see whether this thing doesn't tell me that he's calling or whether it just blinks on screen as it used to and doesn't necessarily make a noise. We'll find out exactly what's going on. Okay, let's see. Thank you. A production note. Howard Stern, I guess, yesterday played a quote from Pat Robertson about mac and cheese being a, quote, black thing. And that doesn't surprise me at all. Mac and cheese typically not black at all. If it is, you're making it wrong. But I think he means ethnically speaking. But I think it's also very much a Southern thing. But leave it to Pat Robertson to try and find a way to shoehorn a little bit of race into Thanksgiving. Not that I guess, why leave it to Pat Robertson? We could also, of course, we could shoehorn Native American races into Thanksgiving and bring on some guests who might not celebrate it in quite the same way you and I do. Well, I guess there's a possibility of taking this from either approach. I don't want to say both sides of this because it's not real. And I don't believe in that. Anyway, Most of the Twitter chatter this morning about Dotard J. Trump returning to Pervalago once again. The season is back upon us. Oh, can't get rid of that noise, I guess. Well, we'll just answer the phone really quick. Okay. Good morning, Greg. How you doing?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm okay, except for not being able to turn off the loud and obnoxious ringtone in Skype.
Not yet.
They improved it.
They improved it, so it usually takes about a week and a half to figure
Right.
out how to get rid of the improvements.
I know. I can't turn off the get rid of the improvements because I can't get rid of the button that says they want to show me how the new Mac OS works.
Oh, wonderful.
So, everybody updated. Mac OS updated. Skype updated.
Well,
Firefox
we're getting rid of net
updated.
neutrality. This means that
Oh.
what you have to do is you have to put a quarter in the back of the machine to get what you want.
I guess so. Anyway, it's been super fun trying to deal with that. And anyway, who cares?
They still make quarters, right? They have Steve Mnuchin's
They do.
Picture on it.
Oh, they might. There's a new one out. I got a new one the other day as change. It had an Ellis Island design on the back. I don't know whether it's still a state thing or whether they're just
I don't know.
doing
The state things are
national
fun.
monuments.
We
Yeah, that was
liked
cool.
collecting those things. So my pundit roundup today was about the tax scam,
That
which
thing.
is one step closer because Murkowski withdrew her objections to the Affordable Care Act individual mandate repeal. She doesn't mind that anymore for some reason.
It's different.
Probably spelled Anwar.
Oh, yeah, that could be it. Can't wait to drill. That's been a huge. People are still clamoring for it. In fact, the Republicans still haven't left the House floor, demanding that we drill here, drill now, pay less.
Well, I think that's a dentist lobby, right? So we have lots going on, though. The young Republicans have withdrawn their support for Roy Moore. And this
How
is a
young?
very interesting quote. Young enough to be called young Republicans.
Okay.
So I guess under 60.
Well, they're a targeted group now.
Yeah. Obviously, I would never vote for Doug Jones, the Democratic candidate in the race.
No.
This particular spokesperson for the Young Republicans said in a
Obviously.
telephone interview with NBC News, at this point, I would probably not even go to vote on December 12th. That's not a position she ever thought she'd find herself in, and it's not a comfortable one. I've never felt the inner turmoil I feel over this. At some point, decency comes before politics. So, as I pointed out in the pundit roundup, it isn't that the Republicans will vote for Doug Jones, it's that they'll stay home. And that's the dynamic to watch for. And Harry Enton notes that of all the polls that have polled after this Washington Post explosive story came to light with the first four accusers, and then there were more after that, polling that came out in the field after that and yet again after that, there's three of those, all of them have continued to show more drop. The latest poll out yesterday had more up 2, but that's after being up 6, and then before that after, being up 11. All the other polls, the other two polls that it came out that have two polling markers have both shown Jones ahead at this point. And so he's got a very slim lead. But just like what we saw in Missouri with Todd Akin, what happens is that sometimes you get this slide and the slide continues and the polls don't always pick all of that up. So Jones has an excellent chance of winning. He's running a terrific race. He now has an ad out, which is featuring quotes from Ivanka Trump, Jeff Sessions, and Richard Shelby about how they either believe the women or can't vote for Roy Moore. So again, he's putting up this whole position of a permission structure, which he's done with other Republicans. I'm a Republican. I can't vote for Roy Moore. I'm a Republican. I'm voting for Doug Jones. So he's reminding the highly Republican state of Alabama that it's okay to vote for a Democrat now and again, and particularly in this particular circumstance.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened yesterday is that Donald Trump virtually endorsed Roy Moore.
Donald Trump, yes.
He basically came out and said that, well, we can't have a liberal Democrat.
No.
And besides, Roy Moore denies these things.
Yes, that's true. He does. He puts a lot of stock in that. He also, of course, wanted to make sure everybody knew that Doug Jones was soft on crime. The federal prosecutor who prosecuted Klansmen in Alabama, super soft on crime. That's his go-to thing. He didn't even bother to research who it was. He just said,
if you swap out crime for black,
yeah,
if he's soft on blacks.
Yes.
That's what he's saying.
He helps them by prosecuting their murderers.
Yeah,
See?
so he's soft on them. See?
Yeah, he would have given them a pass, of course. He also played a couple of interesting games yesterday, Trump saying that the Roy Moore thing, well, the accusations are like almost 40 years old, so, it's about time you just drop it and give them a pass, which of course was the case with the murder prosecutions for the Klansmen, but Doug Jones thought it was still important.
Right. So since he went and did that, the Washington Post went and put a fact-checker analysis out today.
Oh, dear.
President Trump and accusations of sexual misconduct, the complete list. So they've got the 13 women and their stories on the front page right there.
Yes.
Talking
Good.
about what happened, which is very good. And that was the obvious reaction to Trump, getting himself involved, which is why he up to now didn't get himself involved. Now, people look at this and say, okay, well, this obviously means that this is going to be a boost for more, but not necessarily so. It doesn't necessarily work that way. There's another piece in the Washington Post, which is James Holman's Daily 202, the Washington, D.C. area code. With increasingly vocal backlash to harassment, 2018 could be the year of the women on steroids. And points out
what?
that the whole idea is that this isn't a Weinstein moment, it's a Trump moment. And a lot of the Weinstein and everything else
Weinstein's
is
over.
by absolute revulsion and aversion to Trump doing the Access Hollywood thing and still winning.
Yes.
And it's been a belated backlash, but a backlash it is. And the question is how big, how strong, women's marches, etc., women powering the vote in Virginia, and then the next test case is in 3 weeks with Roy Moore.
Yeah, there's a little bit of permission structure going on here too. The media, of course, they reported these stories the first time. It's not like they've ignored them, and there's been a lot of discussion by activists and political junkies about how it sort of seems like those stories have disappeared from the news cycle, and they have. But media types need, I guess, what they call a hook to bring back a story like that, and that's their sort of permission structure. Roy Moore has provided a permission structure to re-examine Donald Trump's own sordid past. And so is Harvey Weinstein and all that. But Weinstein's over with. I mean, that's done. He'll be, he'll still be a story for a long time, but you know how news cycles and attention spans go. We're on to the next one, and there'll be another one tomorrow. But unless we were just told, unless there was a reckoning with Clinton, we would never be able to, well, there's a more recent and relevant reckoning that needs to be had. And I'm glad the media is taking the permission structure being offered to them.
You're exactly right. The hook, they call it a hook, we call it permission structure, and it's the same thing. And the Weinstein story isn't done because Ronan Farrow keeps publishing more and more stuff.
That's true. It gets worse and worse, although...
It gets worse and worse, yeah.
Yeah,
so
we've all made up our minds about Weinstein.
We made up our minds, and there may not be... but there still may be new people coming out talking about it.
And they need attention.
And
they should get it, yes.
The details and the degree that Weinstein went to hide some of this stuff for decades,
yes.
including using his brother's money, paying these people from other people's accounts so it wasn't tied to him.
Good point.
I mean, it reads like the Panama Papers for rich people hiding their taxes. Oh, taxes, that's up for discussion too. A lot of this is all coming together.
Yeah.
And so it's not quite going away. And sure, there is no possible way Trump avoids discussion about his own accusations. And now that there's a hook, you're right. Here it is back on the front page.
Yeah, and he's back at the scene of the crime too, back at Mar-a-Lago, where a lot of this stuff went on.
Mm. There's that. What else do we have? We have The Hill has a piece, Establishment GOP conflicted over potential Moore win. What they did is they went and they interviewed several different people. One of them says no legislative win is worth sacrificing the integrity of our political institutions, which is what you'd be doing by asking people to accept legitimacy of this candidacy. Talking about Moore. In other words, agreeing with the young Republican. But other Republicans argue that while the allegations of sexual misconduct are disappointing and distressing even,
yes,
it would be foolish to hamstring Trump's agenda by hoping Moore loses.
Okay. I just want to point out
that
you just said young Republican, but I heard that.
Well, you must be Al Franken. So, or to actively, and I say that not because
Why did I
of
say
his
that?
recent issues in the news, but you may remember Franken and Davis, when they were on SNL, had this skit where every time one of them said "but," the other one would point to their butt. That was part of their humor.
Excellent. See? He was doing it even then.
He was doing it even then. I never found that funny, but there it is.
But
Other Republicans argue that
Say
while
that
the every time you say "but," you
What?
think Al Franken.
okay.
By the way, there's a new poll coming out. People in Minnesota are very disappointed with him. Very little support for him. About a third say that he should wait for the ethics inquiry to happen, and about a third say that he should just flat out resign, and only in the 20s say that he should stay, if I recall that poll correctly. Minnesota's a good government state, and so his re-election chances aren't all that great right at the moment.
Yes.
So just thought I'd point that out. Anyway, so this other Republican says, but other Republicans argue that while the allegations of sexual misconduct are disappointing and distressing, it would be foolish to hamstrung Trump's agenda by hoping that more loses or to actively withdraw support. And here's the quote that just drove me bonkers. They need a Republican in that seat, and there are no two ways about it. I think they'll have to quietly support Roy Moore. Brian Darling, a former Republican Senate aide, said of the GOP establishment in Washington. He's going to vote the right way when he comes to the Senate, Darling said of Moore. That's more important than these personal controversies.
I see.
He's talking about a 14-year-old and child molestation.
Yeah.
And he still says, yeah, but it's more important that he vote the right way. Well, F you, Brian Darling. That's ridiculous. And I don't think that that's the way that a lot of people in Alabama are going to take this.
I hope not. I know they know that this is wrong. We'll see what they do.
As Southpaw points out, when he was 32, Roy Moore picked up an eighth grader outside a custody hearing and molested her.
Yeah.
And the White House supports him becoming a senator.
Yes. Right. Oh, that was a big point the other day. It was one of his pastor friends saying, well, some of these girls look 20. But, not a lot of 20-year-olds in their parents' custody hearings, nor in trig class, by the way.
Anyway, Bill Kristol notes, the GOP tax bill's bringing out my inner socialist. The sex scandals are bringing out my inner feminist. Donald Trump and the Roy Moore thing are bringing out my inner liberal. What is happening? That's a Bill Kristol tweet, which is actually rather funny.
He's a confused individual. I didn't realize he even had inner any of those things, but I guess I'm glad he's acknowledging it and exploring his feelings. I don't really want to talk about the rest of that.
Okay, well, then we won't talk about the rest of that. But did you, when you did the show yesterday with Armando, did you have? I know you did the end of the IRS scandal.
Yes.
In the first part of the show, did you get to the Adam Silver piece?
No. Although I mentioned that you brought it up, and it was exploding while we were doing some other stuff, and I was hoping to get to that. I thought I might use it for later in the week, but by that time everyone will have read it. It's huge. I mean, it's long, so I couldn't read the whole thing. But
it's long, but it's also
huge.
important. It's also huge.
Yes, that part.
So in the Atlantic,
kind of huge. Yes,
he wrote a particular relook at what was going on with the Trump vote. He calls it the nationalist illusion. Trump supporters back the time-honored American political tradition, disavowing racism while promising to enact a broad agenda of discrimination.
Yeah,
which is what he's doing. And he goes back to David Duke when he was running Louisiana for Senate. Writes, David Duke's strong showing wasn't powered merely by poor or working-class whites, and his poorest demographic in the state, black voters, backed his opponent, Johnston. Duke clobbered Johnston in white working-class districts.
Yes.
Duke ran even with Johnston in predominantly white middle-class suburbs. He lost only because black Louisianans, representing a quarter of the electorate, voted against him in overwhelming numbers, the Washington Post reported in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where it gets interesting. Duke picked up 60% of the white vote, nearly. Faced with Duke's popularity among whites of all income levels, the press framed his strong showing largely as a result of the economic suffering of the white working class. Right? So
Yes.
they overlooked his racism and called it economic anxiety. Does this sound familiar? Louisiana had one of the least educated electorates in the nation and a large working class that suffered through a long recession, the Post stated. By accepting the economic theory of Duke's success, the media was buying into the candidate's own vision of himself as a savior of the working class. He had appealed to voters in economic terms. He tore into welfare and foreign aid, affirmative action, and outsourcing, and attacked political action committees for subverting the interests of the common man. He even tried to appeal to black voters, buying a 30-minute ad in which he declared, "I'm not your enemy."
Oh.
While the rest of the country gawked at Louisiana and the Duke fiasco, Walker Percy, a Louisiana author, gave a prophetic warning to the New York Times. Don't make the mistake of thinking David Duke is a unique phenomenon confined to Louisiana rednecks and yahoos. He's not. He's not just appealing to the old clan constituency. He's appealing to the white middle class. And don't think that he or somebody like him won't appeal to the white middle class of Chicago or Queens.
Yes.
Queens. That's where Trump is from.
Oh,
Queens.
yes.
Home of Archie Bunker.
Yeah. That's true.
So a lot of this goes back to, Duke's appeal, which is one of the reasons why David Duke was such a great supporter of Trump's. Yeah, it's racism. Yeah, you can deny the racism, but the press rushing to say it's all economic anxiety and ignoring the racist part of it. I'm not a racist. I just told you I wasn't. I just don't want that black guy in the White House. I voted for him, but I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. I didn't like the alternative because the alternative was like the whole economy, sort of collapsed. So I couldn't vote for McCain. And, so I had to vote for this other person. Doesn't mean I like him. There are people that voted for Trump because they felt like they couldn't vote for Clinton, but they didn't necessarily like him. But some of the core voters here that we're talking about, just flat out racism and encouraging the, don't talk about racism part, I think is ridiculous. Now, I can have that thought at the same time and say, yeah, but 10% you can peel off because they really weren't happy with Trump. They just felt like they didn't have an alternative. And 10%, if you swing it to the other side, is a landslide. And I'm fine with that. And those are the people that you should speak to. But the core voters, who really are deplorable,
Yes.
are motivated not by economic anxiety. And we know that because the poorest of the voters didn't go for Trump. Just like they didn't go for Duke in Louisiana. Oh, they happen to be people of color, but, so what, right?
Yes. Or maybe they're more relaxed about the economics.
Now, the other sloppy thing that the media tends to do is when they mean white working class, or when they mean white people, they say working class.
True. They do say that, and it's not true.
And it's not true. So, all of that is background to his discussion about Trump and how Trump voters got what they wanted, because this is what they wanted. They wanted somebody to attack the whole concept of a black president and make the whole thing illegitimate, which is why Trump's initial foray into this was birtherism. And, the other side of it is that Trump accurately picked up the parts of this that would sell. And it really sold in the Republican primary where he just blew away the opposition.
Yeah.
Because the Republican base is, the same folks who voted for David Duke in Louisiana.
Well, that explains it. So enough with the economic anxiety, everybody.
Right. And so he runs, oh, no, it's economic anxiety. He ran a populist campaign. So what does he do? He gets into office and he does the very same thing that George Bush would have done. There's nothing populist about what he's doing with his tax plan. It takes money from poor people and gives it to rich people.
Yes.
It's a traditional Republican plan, which in no way, shape, or form is populist.
Except if it is.
But it's not.
Oh.
So all he has is going back to the base over and over, as we all know, even with the elephant tusk thing and trophies.
Yes.
Why did he give up on that?
That's usually populist.
First he said, I'm going to let people go hunt for elephants. And then he said, no, I'm not. But why did he say, no, I'm not? He almost never changes his mind. He almost never says I was wrong. What happened is that people on the right in this part of his base got upset.
Yeah. They didn't understand what was a great idea about this. What
Laura
is this making
Ingraham,
America great?
Right. Laura Ingraham thinks elephants are majestic, and Charlie Savage thinks that elephants are wonderful, and so Trump cannot afford to lose his base because he has nothing else, and so that was unacceptable, and he had to go back and he had to refigure.
Yeah. Well, I'm still not sure, and I think he's still holding out the possibility that he could be convinced to reinstate his original. Well, I guess go with his original repeal.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure of that at all. It's hard to tell because he's so incoherent.
Yes, well,
but to me, his dithering on it is because he can't admit he's wrong, so he has to do it in stages.
I think that's probably likely true. I mean, I guess it's always possible that the last people he hears about it are his kids at Thanksgiving, and but it seems like the kind of thing that he probably will tweet about over the break because his sons will prevail on him to stick with his original position, and then by the time he gets back to Washington, he'll undo it again. It's possible. You never know. Right. This guy's insane.
Right. So we no longer have a break at the half hour?
No, we do have a break at the half hour, and it is coming, and we'll see whether I have corrected the issue with you hearing the music in about 10 seconds, 15 seconds. I'll let you know.
Well, a couple of quick points then before the break about other things that Sower has. One measure of the allure of Trump's white identity politics is the extent to which it's overridden other concerns as his administration has faltered.
I see.
Supporters have stood by him even as he evinced every quality they described as a deal breaker under Obama.
Okay.
Lack of faith, thrice married libertine, under malign foreign influence, all these things that they accused Obama of, Trump does.
Okay.
And I'll come back with more after the break.
Okay. Are you able to hear the music? Now I need to know.
I do not hear the music.
You still don't hear the music? Okay, I thought we had corrected that problem, and I guess we'll
I heard it last
time.
Too.
But interesting. Well, okay. This time, all indications are you should be able to. But we'll be back after this break regardless. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio and not on Rochester Radio. I wanted to update you on that situation. Just talking to Greg behind the scenes, I guess, now that we're back on the air. Yeah, the Rochester Free Radio folks decided that, I guess their Tom Hartman fans decided that they would rather have actually, I think a rerun of Tom Hartman in our slot. I think they were running his show super early in the morning to make way for live new content from us. And I guess, people were used to having their Tom Hartman in the morning and complained to the board, and that's the way it goes. I think, his content was still available on there, and of course is available by podcast, but old habits, I guess, die hard for some folks.
Well, there you have it.
We're still here. Okay.
So I was talking about this Adam Sower thing here.
Yes.
And he points out that a lot of the things that Trump's, just the hypocrisy, Trump's voters had a whole litany of things that they hated about Obama, and it turns out just about every one of them is true about Trump.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lack of faith, thrice married libertine on Trump's part, accused Obama of being under malign foreign influence. We know about the Russia thing. They accused Obama of genuflecting before Russian President Vladimir Putin. That's pretty funny now. They attacked Obama
Really?
for his ties to Tony Rezko, the crooked real estate agent. That seems pretty funny now. Conservatives said Obama was lazy. Trump gets bored and likes to watch TV.
Yeah.
They said Obama's golfing was excessive. We know about that.
Right.
They attributed Obama's intellectual prowess to his teleprompter. Trump seems to unable to describe the basics of any of his own policies. They said Obama was a self-obsessed egomaniac. Conservatives said Obama quietly used the power of the state to attack his enemies. Republicans said Obama was racially divisive. Trump has called Nazis very fine people. Conservatives portrayed Obama as a vapid celebrity. Trump is a vapid celebrity. There's virtually no personality defect, he writes, than conservatives accused Obama of possessing that Trump himself doesn't actually possess. This, not some uncanny auricular talent, is the reason Trump's years-old tweets channeling conservative anger at Obama apply so perfectly to his own present conduct, as people have pointed out. There's a Trump tweet in the past for everything that he does today.
Yes.
Everything that he claims Obama is doing wrong, he does wrong. But, that's his whole thing. He projects on everybody else. Trump's great political insight was that Obama's time in office, here's the important part, inflicted a profound psychological wound upon many white Americans, one that he could remedy by adopting the false narrative that placed the first black president outside the bounds of American citizenship. He intuited that Obama's presence in the White House decreased the value of what W.E.B. Du Bois described as the psychological wage of whiteness across all classes of white Americans, and that their path to their hearts lay in invoking a bygone past where this affront had not taken place and could not take place. That the legacy of the first black president could be erased by a birther, that the woman who could have been the first female president was foiled by a man who confessed to sexual assault on tape. These are not drawbacks to Trump's candidacy, central to understanding how he would wield power and on whose behalf. Americans act with the understanding that Trump's nationalism promises to restore traditional boundaries of race, gender, and sexuality. The nature of that same nationalism is to deny its essence, the better to salve the conscience and spare the soul. So you can't be a sexist, you can't be a misogynist, you can't hate LGBTQ people because you do. It's got to be on a religious basis. It's got to be economic anxiety. And it can't really be, that you're a horrible person. It's because you just want things to be the way they were, which is a much more anodyne way of, saying that what you don't like is that there's too many people of color and you don't like walking down the street watching guys hold hands because somehow or other it makes you uncomfortable.
That's the cover story. I just want things to be the way they were when all those other people hated those guys. I don't hate them. I just want it to be the way it was when people who did hate them were in control.
Right. Other facts he points out, and these are all hugely important, although there's one caveat to this Matt Brunig objected to. We'll get to that. It's true that most Trump voters framed his appeal in economic terms. Clinton defeated Trump handily among Americans making less than $50,000 a year. Among voters making more than that, the two candidates ran roughly even. The electorate skews wealthier than the general population. Voters making less than $50,000, Clinton won 53-41, but they were only 36% of the votes cast. Those making more than $50,000, whom Trump won by a single point, made up 64%. So the most economically vulnerable Americans voted for Clinton overwhelmingly. The usual presumption is exactly the opposite. So when you talk about economic anxiety, people making less than $50,000 voted for Clinton. So where's the economic anxiety? The answer is they're black or people of color, and they don't get scammed.
Oh.
Now, if you look at white voters alone, a different picture emerges. Trump defeated Clinton among white voters in every income category, winning by margin of 57-34 among whites making less than $30,000, 56-37 less than $50,000, 61-33 for those making $50 to $100, and 56-39 among those $100 to $200, and 50 to 45 among the wealthiest. In other words, Trump won white voters at every level of class and income. He won workers, managers, owners. He won robber barons. This is not a working class coalition. It's a nationalist one. Now, there is a difference by education. You can slice it differently and look at education, which is Matt Brunig's objection. And further, Matt Brunig goes on to say, if you compare the white voters in those categories to how Romney did, it's not that different.
Okay.
In other words, Romney won those same voters by that same amount, but lost. And the reason he lost is that people of color, including blacks and Latinos, voted for Obama in higher numbers than they voted for Clinton.
Okay.
By about 5 or 6 points in those categories. So, which is a fancy way of saying that the Obama coalition didn't entirely turn out for Clinton.
Okay.
Right? And so the question on the table is, why was that? One is, of course, Obama's unique candidate. That might be. And people predicted that the turnout might not be as high for people of color this time around. The other is that Clinton did less well in cutting into that white voting coalition than she had hoped to. She had hoped to make better gains among the college-educated whites, for example, especially college-educated white women. And that might have been dampened both by the Russia meddling and by Comey.
Yes.
Enough so that 80,000 votes one way or the other made the difference in how you analyze this election, which really is kind of silly when you think about it. But, you know, that small number of votes made the difference between winning and losing. So one can also argue, and I think that, you know, it's fair to say that Clinton was not the most popular candidate on the Democratic Party ever. Yeah, she won the most votes compared to everybody except Obama, but, you know, the country's grown. There were things that made people, whether it was manipulation, whether it was Fox News, whether it was misogyny, whatever it was, there were things that made people not trust Clinton and not want to vote for her.
Yes.
And that's a huge, you know, part of why she lost, even though somebody even more unpopular than her won. But the overall point there is you can't just look at this and say, well, it's all economic anxiety. It's not. The white vote stayed on the Republican side.
Okay. Oh. Sorry.
Well, yeah.
I didn't do it, but I mean.
You didn't do it. I didn't do it either. But again, you know, the point of all of that is that it's very difficult to blow off the whole thing as well. You know, Clinton didn't go to Wisconsin often enough because she didn't appreciate their economic anxiety. That ain't what happened.
Oh. Well, maybe there was no economic anxiety, for one thing.
Yeah, for example. And so that would be a big part of that. Anyway, so I think that it was a fantastic article, and I only got to half of it. You know, but I think it's a really detailed, well-documented, great example piece countering the whole idea that this is economic anxiety and it's back row versus front row people.
Yes. No, we've all felt that for a long time. We've all said as much for a long time, but he just does a great job in rounding up all the facts. He marshals the facts. That's an interesting thing to do if you're a journalist. Marshal facts. Make an argument and lay it all out. I also have only gotten halfway through it.
I like Marshall facts. Marshall and I went to high school together.
Yes. Plus, he invented the fax machine, which was for a while a big hit, but eventually died out.
So those are the one of the big stories of the day. The other one, which we don't necessarily have a whole lot of time to go into, was a really interesting piece from Josh Holland in The Nation. Joshua Holland writes, here's a path to Medicare for almost all that isn't doomed to fail.
Oh, good.
Okay. And he's talking about, instead of just doing Medicare for all, he says those bills, the Conyers and Sanders approach, is the most disruptive and difficult possible route to a comprehensive national healthcare system. They're too easy to misrepresent. Like any other deep reforms, they'd face concerted opposition from the right, centrist Democrats, healthcare providers. But they'd face another obstacle, too. Because they compel so many people to give up their existing coverage for the promise of something better within a short period of time, they're almost guaranteed to spark a popular backlash. We know that happens because that's what happened with the Clinton health plan back in the 90s.
Yes. That I thought you were going to say it happened again with the Affordable Care Act, which it sort of did.
But it did, even though all the steps taken to avoid that, still couldn't avoid all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So Holland says without strong popular support, these approaches are doomed to fail. And the reason the Affordable Care Act didn't fail is because they went out of the way to avoid those issues. And it was still contentious and it was still difficult, and only now is it becoming popular.
Everybody just assumed that it was going to be the same issue, and it didn't turn out to be. But we had been scared out of our wits once or twice before, and so
there was a playbook, and they followed it.
Easy for the Tea Party to simply just say, well, this horrible thing is happening, and then, okay, it took a while, but eventually people figured out, it's not happening.
So consider an alternative approach, one that combines the audacity of the Sanders and Conyers plans with an understanding of the difficulties involved in restructuring a sector of the economy that accounts for 1 out of every 11 American jobs.
That sounds reasonable.
Here's what he suggests. You roll Medicaid, CHIP, the Child Health Insurance Program,
doesn't exist,
and other public spending into Medicare.
Okay.
So Medicare is now Medicare plus Medicaid plus CHIP.
All right. Why
you
is
empower
that?
it because you empower it because it's not finished.
Oh.
You can empower it to negotiate with providers. Firstly, that includes a lot of people. There's a lot of people on Medicare, and there's a lot of people on Medicaid. And so doing it all together, making everybody eligible,
yes,
takes away that you get it and I don't. Why do you get it and I don't? So you have this larger Medicare pool of people, Medicare, super Medicare, insured through the program. You empower it to negotiate with providers and expand the program's coverage as a benefit to older working people, children, and the poor, which is what the Medicare, super Medicare thing would be. And then you open that up for the rest of the population. Individuals and businesses can buy into it voluntarily at their own pace.
What was the other plan?
So when you're ready,
okay.
So when you're ready, employers can say, I like the employer-sponsored insurance I have now, or the alternative is I can buy into this new Medicare program. Individuals can say, I like the employer sponsor I have now, or I can choose to use this new government program. Up to me. If I'm not ready to do it this year, I can think about doing it next year. I don't have to. Nobody's telling me I have to do it now.
Okay.
And if you take away that nobody's telling me I have to, you make it far more popular with the public.
All right. Giving people a chance to slide into it like DMs.
Yeah, over time. And, with no end on the overtime thing.
Is that all
the
difference?
It just is what it is. Yeah. But you get to Medicare for almost all. That's what he calls it. Path to Medicare for almost all. It's not doomed to fail. And you get there eventually. And it's far less contentious than just telling people you're going to change.
I would imagine it would be. I guess,
but
to
you
be
get
honest,
to the same
I didn't
place.
study it enough. What the Conyers and Sanders plans were. Okay.
Well, it's hard because they only had like a couple of pages of aspirational stuff. So there's really not.
It should have been easy for me to read it if there was only a few pages, but I didn't, and that's a problem. But okay, is it really just a matter of stretching out the time horizon?
A lot of it is, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but get the people who need it right away in there. The more important, absolutely desperate, dependent folks, which is the Medicaid folks and the Children's Health Program.
Okay.
Now, there's still issues to be determined. For example, is Medicare for All going to cover drugs? Is there still the donut hole? Does it cover dental? What about your glasses? I mean, there's a lot of details here that need to be worked out, and it's also always possible, as we have now, for supplemental programs on the private market to fill that gap.
True.
But the bulk of the big need would in fact be covered.
Well, that would be pretty good. I can't imagine why. I guess in an open discussion about that kind of an option, you wouldn't find widespread agreement on it. But
well, it's incremental. People don't like
I guess that's true
stuff.
too. I hate incrementalism. Well, you could gradually get to absolutism. How about that?
Yeah, but it's far more practical.
I guess so. I mean, that's the sort of thing that strikes me as sensible enough. But then again, I imagine if Bernie Sanders were here to say, no, we can't do it that way, I'd say, good point there too. Gee whiz, I don't know. I haven't heard him discuss stretching out the implementation period. It's not hard to imagine Bernie Sanders saying, no, can't be done, would be a disaster. Okay. I don't know why, but I could hear him saying it anyway.
Well, what Holland says about the Sanders and Conyers plans is that it would compel almost 6 out of 10 people in the non-elderly population that get insurance through their employers,
yes,
or their spouses' employers, to move into a new program in a short period of time.
Right.
One can argue that the whole problem with the healthcare system we have now was the World War II decision to go with employer-sponsored insurance, and that just skewed everything. But it is what it is. It's what we have now, and people are very reluctant to change to something else, even though they complain about it all the time.
Yes.
So the Sanders-Conyers approach is a pull the Band-Aid off real fast and get people out.
Okay.
And this approach is wean them off of it and let them move out at their own pace.
That seems more likely to work in America, where even though we think we want our results right away, we really don't.
Right.
Okay.
So, anyway, again, a very long article. I only touched part of it, and they talk about some of the pluses and minuses. But, yeah, and then, for example, what do you do with Medicare Advantage? The plans that aren't quite Medicare, that are more like private insurance, grandfather them for current employees and stop offering them for new beneficiaries. So you don't take something away from people that already have it.
Yes.
And then you allow private insurance to continue to sell the kind of heavily regulated policies that they do now, and then people can decide.
Yeah, I mean,
and if you buy into
like
Medicare, you're still eligible to get one of these other programs if you wish, but not the full substitute for Medicare, just the benefits part that are lacking.
Well,
Make a public benefit truly public. Give private insurers a role in covering those who get their insurance through their employer, if they decide to stay.
Sounds reasonable enough. I don't know what takes so long for him to point that out. I guess he should have serialized this program, by the way. I don't like the fact that he told me his entire plan all at once. I'm very frightened.
Well, see, that's why it has to be incremental.
Yeah.
So he concludes and says, it may be incremental, but it's not timid. It would represent a massive expansion of public health coverage that would inevitably face concerted opposition and be difficult to enact into law. But by building on demonstrable progress over time, rather than pushing everybody into a new insurance scheme based on a promise that it'll be superior, it would make a popular backlash less likely. So basically he's making an argument for incrementalism, which is, of course, why I like the article, because I'm an incrementalist.
I am slowly coming around to accepting incrementalism. I'll get back to you tomorrow.
Well, okay. We'll get back to you tomorrow as soon as I finish my assertiveness training program, which I'm really not sure about whether I like.
Well, you have plenty of time. And okay. Well, very
right.
good. Yeah. Anything else? Any other 14, 15,000 word articles out there?
There's
today?
a bunch of them. I found a bunch of good ones for this one, but I will just end with talking about a little bit about the sexual misconduct stuff that's going on.
Yes, there's more. Okay.
There's always more. And there's going to be more and more and more. Brian Beutler points out, and we covered this a little bit in the front page story with the Post, Trump has a lot of fake media gripes, but from my vantage point, Brian writes, he's currently benefiting enormously from widespread media reluctance to center the story of the new sexual misconduct paradigm around him. But that's starting now, and he doesn't really have any control over that. And so there are people who are pointing out, okay, well, Trump is in the middle of this stuff. Now that he's endorsed or semi-endorsed or practically for all practical purposes endorsed Roy Moore, that's the hook and the permission structure to talk about him. So Beutler points out, up until now, how screwy it's been.
Yeah.
Benji Sarlin points out, both parties are about to be hit with a flood of harassment investigations.
There we are.
That gives both reason to be wary about settling precedents for resignation, cutting campaign funds, etc., but that's their problem, not yours.
Oh, okay.
And that comes in with the Franken thing too, and with the Conyers part of it.
Yes, we have not yet mentioned the Conyers part. I think everybody's up to speed generally on the fact that there's an issue now.
Nate Silver says this is a big part of the weak replies from Congress on Conyers, etc. There's going to be lots of these stories coming out, and they're still trying to calibrate how they're going to respond to them. Now, yeah. John Conyers was involved. This is interesting. John Conyers was involved with settlements for harassment. That's verified. Mm-hmm. But the information seems to have come out through Mike Cernovich, who is a right-wing agitator. And the question on the table that Dana Houle brought up is, are these Russian-hacked documents that got to Cernovich through the same channels that, all this other stuff came from? How it got to him doesn't change the fact that they appear to be true. But how they got to him may be a big story in and of itself. That's separate. We'll put that aside.
Yeah.
The idea, keep an eye out for that at a later date. The fact that people don't know how to respond to Conyers is also bollocksed up by this observation from Tim Alberta. He's a very good reporter, used to be at the National Journal. And where is he now? I even forget where he is now. He's at Politico.
Okay.
And he says, okay, reality check. John Conyers has not been all there mentally for some time. Every top dem in Michigan and D.C. knows that.
Yes.
So maybe he's lying, or maybe he just lacks the capacity to understand what happened. Either way, he doesn't belong in Congress.
Well, that could be the case. You know, he's been on a downward slide for some time. Yeah, mentally, that's just true.
It is true, and so for that reason, I mean, everybody who is I don't know him, and I'm not in D.C., but I'm told by people like Tim Alberta who are that this is one of those known things that people just don't talk about publicly. It's time to talk about it publicly. There are people that really need to retire.
Yeah.
And whether it's Frank, and you can argue about whether it's John Conyers, it's true.
Yes, it is true, and it's been a good 10 years, really.
Anyway, going to wrap up with that as Abby hears somebody at the door.
It's John Conyers.
It's John Conyers complaining about this. So with that, I will sign off. This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman, along with Abby, the doorbell.
Oof. I'm going to answer, yes.
Yeah, and I'll see you later. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
I think you will. Enjoy it. Don't let the dog make off with the turkey. That was a Christmas movie that happened, but still, nonetheless, a present danger. Thanks, Greg.
Okay, take care. Just let her out. And,
okay. Easy enough. All right.
Bye.
Very good. Take care. Enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Food for thought for Thanksgiving.
Food.
But, yeah.
Who would have thought it?
Who would have thunk it?
Okay.
Take care.
You
Talk
do
to
the same?
Next week.
Yes, Monday. Okay. Terrific. We'll be back at that point. And Abby's invited to stay, of course. You can bring her back at any point. And Abby, you can call in on your own if you like to make comments, or you can contact us via Twitter using the hashtag KITM, Kagro in the morning. I don't know if you're able to type, but the rest of you who are humans and not canines can certainly make use of that mechanism. Michael Musson did, and he had this comment, let's see, during the discussion, I guess, of it's 12 minutes ago. Were we still on the Adam Serwer article, or had we moved on to the Josh Holland article at that point? I have a problem with some of the analysis. I think it might have been Serwer. Don't need to explain why she lost. Clinton won the vote. Trump won the Electoral College, which says more about the Electoral College than about Clinton. And that's likely, well, that's certainly a good point and worth considering. But the fact is, of course, it has to be relatively close in order for the Electoral College to really make the difference. I mean, there was millions of votes that went the other way, but that's still relatively close as a percentage of the 120 million cast. That's true. Anyway, I mean, that's obviously, there certainly needs to be a discussion about how we deal with the Electoral College and how often it seems to fail us. But, okay, I don't think that it's misplaced analysis, certainly. It just may not be the answer we're looking for in practical terms. Anyway, I do thank you for chiming in with that. Let's see, other, I guess you could call it breaking news in that it's happening currently. It's not anything drastic or anything anybody else needs to concern themselves with, but I just want to put on the record, Kyle Griffin, who tracks such things, tells us that per the White House press pool, Trump has arrived at Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach at 9:26 a.m. This is his 77th day at a golf club, his 99th day at a Trump property as president. And, of course, whether he goes golfing tomorrow or not, he will be at Mar-a-Lago. That will make it his 100th day at a Trump property. So keep that in mind. And it'll be something you want to monitor, I'm sure, as conditions merit, which is to say, never. So the big 100-day milestone looms after all. Okay, let's see. What other interesting things? Anything else? What's occupying Twitter time this morning? I can't recall now. I've been pleasantly distracted from the ephemeral conversations of Twitter with the more substantive conversation. I've been spoiled by substantive conversation with Greg this morning. But just to check in on what else happened this morning. Let's see. Oh, Rebecca Romans had sent us the observation of Joe My God on Twitter, another Twitter favorite of ours. Just a weird video clip of one of Roy Moore's good friends and big supporters down in Alabama, Flip Benham. I've always been amused by the nickname Flip, and I assume it's a nickname for him. And he was the guy. I mean, he's just, this guy is incredible. If you haven't seen the video, you should take a look at it. I did retweet it when Rebecca sent it to us. He's a pastor and Christian activist. He was the one responsible for the bizarro comment made yesterday that Roy Moore dated teens for their, quote, purity, that he was pursuing these young girls because of their purity. And also, by the way, he also tried to put together some kind of and it's not without basis entirely. I think he was trying to get at what we were getting at the other day when we were just sort of musing about the psychology of his return post-Vietnam, that he might have been skewing his preferences exceptionally young because he felt like he missed out somehow on his childhood in a way. It's not an excuse, obviously, and it doesn't make up for any of the behavior, but I wondered whether it explained any of it. And he thought, I guess Flip Benham's way of putting this was that he got back from Vietnam and, I don't know, he somehow bizarrely formulated it like all the women his age were gone. Like, what? All the men, yes, had very often gone to Vietnam and not returned, or at least not returned to their hometowns. The women, I don't think anybody ever had any, was ever laboring under any illusions about all the women disappearing during Vietnam. But he's a weirdo, and I think he lost his place. Anyway, we'll be right back after this next break. Welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show right here on Netroots Radio. We just do that short break up at the top of the hour. Yes, and Greg says he hears the music this time. Although, you're hearing it, I guess. Are you listening to the stream? It does go out over the air, and that's the good news. The bad news is it's not available to you in your headphones or when you're speaking to me over Skype. So we'll have to straighten that one out. And, we're just going to have to revamp the system. And maybe during the break, I can do a little bit of experimentation and see if we can't figure it out. And I'm going to be spending a lot of time with Skype call testing service, or Skype call testing service, as they like to say it over there. I don't know why they gave that Skype call testing lady an English accent, or whether is she a bot, or is it just a recording and they thought we'll get someone with an English accent to do it. I don't know whether it's because, is Skype English by any chance, or is they're probably not, probably American, and Americans just think that English accents sound like super intelligent and everything. So they like to use English accents for, just about anything. I don't know whether that's really the case. And I used to say here on the show that Brexit kind of was maybe the last time we should assume that being British sounding made you sound more intelligent. But then I learned that vote might have been manipulated by the Russians and the Twitter bots as well. So I feel bad about that one. Sorry, England. Sorry, Britain. Sorry, all of you people who are admirers of the British accent. We owe you an apology on that. Okay, let's see. What else what should we do with the last half of the show? One thing we could do is we could say, everyone who has me on their text stream about what we're doing later in the day should take me off of it because your buzzing is driving me crazy. Sorry. And, you gotta, there we go. An apology from the Peanut Gallery. Okay. Work this out without me. Where were we with all this? Yes. So We can meander through the stories we had collected for today. And as you know, I'm working on putting together a pre-recorded show for Thursday. So I want to try and avoid some of the things that I wanted to wander into in those shows. Here's an odd story. I don't really have a way to transition to this one, but I thought this was interesting and probably won't make the cut for Thursday and or Friday shows if we can get to a Friday show. But I think I mentioned it the other day. Politico had this story from earlier, well, I guess that last week, the 15th. I probably only discovered it over the weekend, though. Theodoric Meyer, that's some kind of name, Theodoric. Daniel Lipman and Josh Dawsey, all bylined on this piece in Politico inside the Lewandowski Embassy. Did you know there was a Lewandowski Embassy? What do they mean by embassy? Well, the subheader sort of starts to explain that. Like Steve Bannon at the Breitbart office, Lewandowski stays upstairs when he's in town. The lower floors house a lobbying firm and sometimes a radio show. Just a regular American with multiple mysterious residences, the ownership of which is a giant question mark, and who knows what going on behind closed doors at these embassies. Corey Lewandowski has a new base of operations in Washington, an elegant, century-old row house that resembles his own version of the Breitbart Embassy, just as Steve Bannon does at the row house a dozen blocks away, where Breitbart News sometimes holds meetings and hosts parties. In the earlier tellings of the stories of the Breitbart Embassy, they actually housed their offices, and they published Breitbart News, at least the D.C. arm of it, from out of that house. I don't know whether that's no longer the case or what. And by the way, we never did, as far as I know, get to the bottom of it. I consider this to be a big media and press failure, but of course they had lots to keep track of, and they can't be faulted for everything. But I always wondered whether was Steve Bannon living in the quote-unquote Breitbart Embassy among Breitbart employees while he was a chief advisor to the White House, while he was still technically employed there and technically separated, firewalled off, completely separated from Breitbart. I think the answer is yeah, he was, and no, he wasn't firewalled off, and he would just go home from a long day of advising Dotard J. Trump about what to do, and then go home and give marching orders to the Breitbart folks who were lingering in the house. But apparently that didn't raise enough interest among the other things that they could have been covering. And granted, that's a small-time scandal versus the big-time stuff that Trump has been spending the rest of his time with. Anyway, so yeah, like Steve Bannon, Lewandowski, Donald Trump's former campaign manager, stays upstairs when he's in town at this fancy townhouse he's got, according to 5 people familiar with the arrangement. The lower floors serve as his workspace, not unusual, right? As well as the offices of Turnberry Solutions, a lobbying firm started this summer by another Trump campaign veteran. And that name has come up in the past, and they've been doing a lot of lobbying that otherwise looks really super suspicious when it's connected that closely to Donald Trump as president of the United States right now. But Lewandowski continues to deny that he has anything to do with these guys, and everybody found that hard to believe because they're based in your house, guy. How can you possibly be denying it? And now he says, well, they're on a different floor of my house. So there you go. Do we believe in this? I don't think so. Lewandowski has said he has nothing to do with Turnberry, but the firm lists the row house's address on all of its lobbying disclosures, and a Turnberry non-disclosure agreement recently sat on a desk in the front room, which I guess counts as Lewandowski's own room. Signs of Lewandowski's presence also abounded when a Politico reporter visited the house last month, including framed copies of articles about Lewandowski. He's not a narcissist, at least, in the print editions of Politico and The Sun of Lowell, Massachusetts, his hometown. You could call this the Turnberry Embassy, said John Fredericks, a friend of Lewandowski's who sometimes broadcasts his syndicated radio show, The John Frederick Show, out of the dining room and allowed a Politico reporter to join him there. So I don't feel so bad anymore about the Kagro in the Morning World headquarters being in the kitchen. John Fredericks, though, I guess, a step above us, broadcasting out of the dining room, except it's not even his dining room, so maybe he's not a step above us. Meanwhile, they're probably taking that guy seriously, and me, I'm just a filthy blogger, I guess. Pressed on that description, that is the Turnberry Embassy. That's interesting. He was calling it. This isn't the Lewandowski Embassy we're working in. This is the Turnberry Embassy. We allow Lewandowski to live here, I guess. Well, anyway, pressed on that description, he corrected himself. Nobody knows what Turnberry is, so I would call it the Lewandowski Embassy. Frederick said, on the air, I call it the Corey Lewandowski Galactic Headquarters. Well, not so bad compared to our Kagro in the Morning World headquarters, but he goes galactic on us. Lewandowski and his family live in New Hampshire, but his Capitol Hill headquarters is the latest sign that he is committed to building a large presence, or a presence, in Trump's Washington. And Turnberry, a name that calls to mind Trump Turnberry, the president's Scottish golf resort, appears to be the latest of a series of companies with ties to Lewandowski that have cashed in on connections to the administration, because that's what they do. They cash in on things. Lewandowski started a lobbying firm, Avenue Strategies, late last year with another Trump campaign veteran, Barry Bennett, but quit in May after a series of stories raised questions about Lewandowski's selling access to the president. He was doing that. There weren't questions. The question was, why are you getting away with it? Not, are you doing it? He quickly started another firm, Lewandowski Strategic Advisors, which the New York Times reported was advising an Ohio payday lender that was previously a lobbying client of Avenue Strategies. So all he did was change the name and reincorporate under a different one. Lewandowski hasn't been registered as a lobbyist since 2011, and he's insisted repeatedly that the work he's doing doesn't meet the definition of lobbying. It does. But two people familiar with Lewandowski's work said he has pitched clients on his ties to Trump, even though he lost some of his access to the president with the arrival of Chief of Staff John Kelly, as did other outside advisors. Lewandowski has complained to associates about it, according to people who have spoken to him. He's clearly making high-level asks of key people in the administration, and at times even the president himself, said one consultant who shares clients with Lewandowski and has heard his pitch to them. Those clients are clearly hiring him for his knowledge and expertise of how the administration works. It doesn't. But okay, he's clearer on that than the rest of us, I guess. He sells how well he knows Trump and that he understands Trump and knows all the people around him, said another person who has spoken with Lewandowski, adding that he boasted of offers to represent foreign governments. Lewandowski may be considering working with other firms, too. He's held discussions with the BGR Group, a top Washington lobbying firm, also a hamburger chain, by the way, but okay. I suppose they can fight one another on the trademark. Anyway, he's also spoken to this top Washington lobbying firm, allegedly, about working together, according to a person familiar with the talks, but it's unclear whether those talks are going anywhere or exactly what Lewandowski's role would be. Sounds like par for the course with that guy. Asked for comment last week, Lewandowski responded by text message that he was on a plane because he's so super important, and asked a reporter to send written questions, which a text message actually was, but okay. He didn't respond to emailed questions, though, or further texts or phone calls, so writing doesn't really matter. Lewandowski's stately new digs are a world away from the cramped offices he rented when he started Avenue. While he no longer has a view of the White House, the row house boasts hardwood floors, fireplaces, and 3 chandeliers. Wow, lights and everything. There's a gleaming kitchen in the back of the main floor and a leafy backyard. 5 unopened bottles of wine sat on the counter recently, along with a big half-empty bottle of Bullet Bourbon sitting high on a shelf. Man, he's just living it up. It's very much like the Breitbart Embassy, said a Trump campaign veteran who knows Lewandowski, who spoke on condition of anonymity. Why does everybody care to be like the Breitbart Embassy? That place has wormed their way into their consciousness, and I think it's, well, maybe it has to do with the fact that, as I've mentioned before, Breitbart, like everything else on the alt-right, is a sex cult, and that's where people go and hook up in the ultra right-wing, alt-right world, so I guess everybody wants to be like the Breitbart Embassy. I don't know why, but they do. Unlike with his previous ventures, Lewandowski has tried to keep his distance from Turnberry. Yeah, right. Perhaps because he signed a non-compete agreement when he quit Avenue. The agreement prohibits Lewandowski from lobbying for foreign or domestic clients for 1 year or directing others who do such work, according to Bennett. So he just simply lobbies and says, what I'm doing isn't lobbying. And the law being what it is, there's no one to say different, plus Trump controls the law. Mike Rubino, a former Trump campaign staffer who worked with Lewandowski at Avenue Strategies, started Turnberry in July, 2 months after Lewandowski left Avenue, according to documents filed in Delaware. Jason Osborne, another Avenue veteran, and Rubino are the only lobbyists listed on Turnberry's registrations. Lewandowski insisted when Turnberry reported its first lobbying clients in September that he wasn't involved with the firm. Get your facts right, Lewandowski said in an interview at the time. I have nothing to do with Turnberry Solutions, which lives in my house. Okay, sure. But Joel Sheltrone, I don't know how he says it, vice president of government affairs at Elio Motors, a Turnberry client, said in September, why do they even need a client? Whatever. Said in September that Lewandowski had been on a conference call with Turnberry. Lewandowski also appeared at the time to have a Turnberry email address. Nothing to do with it. During discussions between Turnberry and the Azerbaijani government this year, Aylin Suleimanov, Azerbaijan's ambassador to the U.S., insisted on talking with Lewandowski before continuing with talks, according to documents shared with Politico. Turnberry hasn't registered to represent Azerbaijan or any other foreign clients. In an interview, Suleimanov said he'd met with Turnberry only once and said he had met Lewandowski on several occasions. I meet with 5 lobbying firms a day. We never discussed signing a contract, he said of his dealings with Turnberry. So what? Rubino, the Turnberry lobbyist, is often spotted with Lewandowski, according to 2 people familiar with his work. Wherever Corey is, Mike is there, whether that's hanging out at the Trump Hotel or pitching business, one of those people said, referring to Rubino. The clearest evidence linking Lewandowski to Turnberry, though, may be the row house, you think? Their very address. Asked whether the house was Corey's personal office or Turnberry's offices, Frederick said there wasn't a distinction. Turnberry is Corey's public affairs company, Frederick said. They're one and the same. The house, built in 1900, is owned by the Citizens United Foundation, according to Washington, D.C. property records. How do you like that for another mysterious ownership issue? Why is it Corey Lewandowski's house if Citizens United owns it? I don't know. It just is. And just like normal Americans, this is the populism coming through here. I have multiple residences. I don't own any of them. Businesses that operate out of my residence and in which I'm a partner are things I have nothing to do with. And my home is owned by a giant super PAC. That's me to a T. To be honest, that's exactly how things are around here. Owned by Citizens United Foundation, according to Washington, D.C. property records. It's not clear whether Lewandowski is an insane idiot or not, but that won't be in property records. It's also not clear whether Lewandowski, Turnberry, or another entity rents the house, or whether Lewandowski is allowed to use it for free. Lewandowski worked with David Bossie, Citizens United's president, on Let Trump Be Trump, the inside story of his rise to the presidency, a book due out next month. Bossie did not respond to requests for comment. That was stupid. As I was reading it, I was saying, I'm being suckered in just like Politico. Can you believe that paragraph? Time out for just a second. Lewandowski worked with David Bossie, Citizens United's president, on the Trump campaign and on the Trump transition. David Bossie was a Trump staffer throughout both. We understand this. We know this. Look at the paragraph they got inserted. Oh, well, they began working together at some different point, post-campaign. That's already, you're misleading us. And where is it going? Why, they worked together on a new book due out this from publication. I mean, we might as well be giving the price point. And at a fine bookseller near you, and here you can find it on Amazon, they give the title, a book due out next month. This ends up being a plug for his stupid book. That should never have made it through the editorial process. Or at the very least, you just say they work together on the Trump campaign and on the Trump transition, plus they have a book coming out together, which you might, I guess you could get away with saying it comes out next month. And why have a link? What is the link to? Amazon. I mean, really, honest to God, guys, you can't edit that out of that. That doesn't add anything except to tell me that you idiots are just taking stenography. This is the most annoyed I've been about hiding commercial announcements inside news since I started thinking about doing the radio thing at all, when I was listening to the so-called progressive news station coming out of Washington, D.C., and they wasted the 1 minute that they gave to the national news once an hour to tell me about the spicy chicken sandwich at McDonald's being discontinued. How do you get that stuff past news editors? Should I bother with the rest of it? Maybe there's something equally annoying in the rest of this article. Lewandowski, quote, does TV and radio interviews in the House. Okay, big whoop. Said one person who knows Lewandowski and has been to the row house. He lets friends of his use it. It's pretty open door. One of those friends, Fredericks, said Lewandowski will sometimes just come downstairs and pop on his radio show. Just walk in, I guess. It's really Fredericks who's popping in, but okay. The House also provides nods to Lewandowski's new influence in Washington, a city where few had heard of him before he took the helm of Trump's campaign in 2015. The framed Politico story was a May piece headlined, Trump eyeing Lewandowski and bossy, by the way, as crisis managers. But he's got a new book out, and by the way, he's got a new line of fragrances and men's trousers coming out next month. Here's a link to, all right, whatever. There's also a letter from Steve King, congressman from Iowa, that hangs on the wall, dated July 20th, 2017, thanking Lewandowski for addressing members of the Conservative Opportunity Society, of which King is chairman. Corey, you lit them up, King wrote in a handwritten note at the bottom of the letter, and you took action. Many of us will follow through on your excellent advice. Well, it's a nice little letter, but for somebody so connected to somebody who's a sitting president of the United States, it's really rather lackluster in terms of the good stuff on the walls. But maybe all the good stuff is in New Hampshire or wherever the hell else he claims to really be living at this time. I don't know. I just found the whole thing really rather, frustrating for one thing, annoying, and another good insight, I guess, into the real weirdness that goes on among these fly-by-night characters that surround the fly-by-night quote-unquote billionaire president. It's all the same, and not surprising. Okay, let's see. With the president now down at Perva-Lago once again, I guess it might be time to take a look at this Washington Post piece from David Farenthold. Always a good bet. No new blockbuster stuff in this, but this was much talked about the other day. Mar-a-Lago's new winter season. By the way, another nod to populism, a winter season. I mean, we all have a winter season. Winter season for you and me is, that's the time when it gets cold outside and I sometimes have to shovel the driveway or something like that. But for these people, the winter season means the winter social season, the winter charity ball season. And the piece is nicely illustrated with a picture of, one of these kind of cookie cutter older socialite ladies who populate Palm Beach during this part of the year. Mar-a-Lago's new winter season. The Red Cross ball is out. The Trumpettes are in. David Farenthold is joined on the byline here by Lori Rosa and Drew Harwell. This was a November 18th entry. And Farenthold, I think this piece grew for him out of his research into how many charitable organizations were canceling their events at Mar-a-Lago because the president is a racist, bigoted, moronic, idiot, big mouth who can't do anything but sully their organization if they were to agree to continue to have their charity functions there. But some of them have. The Red Cross, though, is not among them. In years past, the Mar-a-Lago Club's White and Gold Ballroom, of course, hosted some of the finest events of Palm Beach's gilded winter season. Charity lunches at $750 a plate, quartets playing Mozart, which, you know, Mozart basically defines class. If you want to, if you have a over-decorated ballroom somewhere and you're charging people too much money for something, rubber chicken on a plate, if you play Mozart, it classes the joint up real good. Ambassadors in white tie and tails at the Red Cross Ball in years past. Last week, as a new season began at the private club in Florida owned by President Trump, a speaker on the ballroom stage was talking up far-right conspiracy theorist Alex Jones. By the way, we should go into the ownership structure of Mar-a-Lago one of these days, too. Anything that we say President Trump owns is likely owned by an LLC that he's incorporated for the purpose of collecting all the money and then giving it all to him. And he doesn't really own those things himself either. But okay. Anyway, I guess the real point here is that Alex Jones is the guy being talked up at the ballroom of this important stop on Palm Beach's social circuit. I'm watching Alex Jones nonstop, Joy Vila said, according to a video she posted of the event. Vila, a pro-Trump internet celebrity, is that right, was speaking to a group of young Republicans. And boy, oh boy, was Roy Moore excited about that. We are populist. They're not. You can tell that they're not because they're at Mar-a-Lago. We are populist. We are nationalist, she said. Interesting juxtaposition. True about the nationalist part. So she said this as waiters served brunch. We put America first and we're not afraid. We are populist. Ring, ding, 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 ding. Jeeves, we're ready for lunch. Okay. This week, Trump returns to Mar-a-Lago for the first time since April. He will confront a changed social scene. Oh, by the way, the piece is at this point illustrated by a photo of, I guess, some flyers announcing an event. This would be the Trumpets USA event. We'll get to who the Trumpets are in just a minute. But they show this flyer, and it's really actually a cheesy-looking piece. But anyway, I think the funny part about it is the special guest and keynote speaker, Judge Jeanine Pirro of Fox News, who was, I think, just busted the other day driving, 119 miles an hour somewhere in upstate New York. I don't know whether they arrested her. They should have. But anyway, just thought I'd use that opportunity to shoehorn that story in there. So again, this week, Trump is back in Mar-a-Lago for the first time since April. During the summer, 19 charities that had events scheduled this season at Mar-a-Lago abruptly quit after Trump defended participants in a violent rally in Charlottesville organized by white supremacists. You know all about that. He said they were fine people, loves the Nazis, and 19 of the big ticket items immediately said, screw this, we're out of here. In their place, the club is turning to a different kind of customer. Crazy plastic surgery ladies is the actual answer here, but he doesn't go ahead and say that. I'll just tell you what's up. Republican groups is the real answer. Or David Fahrenholtz's answer, I guess I should say. Televangelist Pat Robertson, who started a gala in order to hold it at Mar-a-Lago. How do you like that? I'm not doing any charity events this year, but maybe I'll start one just to have it at the racist, bigot Nazi guy's house. Thanks, Pat. And a group called Trumpets USA. And there's a link here. They have a website, trumpetsusa.com. It's not an imaginative website, but URLs aren't supposed to be imaginative. They're supposed to be easy to remember. So you can go there and click on it and see the sadness that is trumpetsusa.com. It's just, like I said, it's Palm Beach plastic surgery ladies is what's going on. Oh, they got music. Thank God. Let's see. Listen to Frank DeSalvo's "We're Gonna Make America Great Again." That's what you're doing right now. I'm gonna help you stop listening to Frank DeSalvo's "We're Gonna Make America Great Again." I don't know who Frank DeSalvo is, but if you go to Trumpets USA, turn your sound off, and then scroll down, and it's just the most ridiculous collection of, like I said, older, blonde, mostly Palm Beach ladies. hey, keep on keeping on, ladies. I'm not saying that age is a problem for you. It's just there's a certain kind of a look going on here, and it's really almost kind of comical to see them en masse. Anyway, our last break is coming up. We'll read a little bit over the music. Those of you listening at home and not calling in on Skype can hear it. So we'll take advantage of that. Fit in another paragraph or two here. Once a retreat from the divisive business of politics, the Palm Beach landmark is now a place defined by those divisions, a dynamic the club is monetizing by booking events with Trump's political allies. I guess they're the last people on earth who are willing to hold a charity event at the least charitable place on earth, owned by one of the least charitable people ever discovered by science. Weird. We'll be right back. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show, right here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue, if you're willing, with the story of what's going on in the new social season at Pervalago. The Trumpettes USA, so far the funniest development in all this. Where we left off was, yes. So, right. The, originally, conceived of, I guess, as a retreat from the divisive business of politics back in the days when Mar-a-Lago was owned by its, original owner, wasn't Marjorie Merriweather Post, right? And she thought of it as an escape for presidents from Washington, D.C. Trump, of course, bought it and turned it upside down and turned it into a hub of divisive politics. Mar-a-Lago is still hosting weddings and members for meals on the dining terrace. You can't turn down that money. But the center of Palm Beach's traditional social scene has shifted to the Breakers, a club that Trump once mocked for getting his, quote, leftovers. Self-centered as ever. Maybe if we get time, by the way, we'll speak about his narcissism coming through in his morning rage tweets as well. People will still put on their dancing shoes and pay big money for their tickets and go out for the night, but instead of going to Mar-a-Lago, they'll be going to the Breakers, said Shannon Donnelly, the society editor for the Palm Beach Daily News. Before now, Donnelly said Mar-a-Lago, quote, wasn't political. Now, she said, Donald is political. Thanks. Great observation. Officials with Mar-a-Lago and the Trump Organization did not respond to questions about the new season. Last month, the club's general manager told the Palm Beach Post, "We are really doing fine. It will be a good season." And I have no doubt that these idiots will make up a lot of money and hand it all over to Donald Trump because reasons. The Washington Post asked the White House if Trump himself had any contact with those now flocking to hold events at Mar-a-Lago. "We have nothing to do with coordinating events. The idea that the president has time for event planning at Mar-a-Lago is insulting," White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders wrote in an email, but he still shows up at every one of those events to grab the microphone out of the hands of the father of the bride and say, thank you very much. I'm so glad you came here and paid me a lot of money. And I mean that, a lot of money. You people have paid me a fortune. You're idiots. I love you. How lovely the bride is. Good luck, kids. And blah, blah, blah. And Senator Roy Moore is going to molest your children in the future. I guess that now can be part of the speech as well. Trump has given up day-to-day control of his real estate and hotel business, allegedly. He really didn't. He still owns them, though, including Mar-a-Lago, an old estate that Trump transformed into a private club in the 1990s because he didn't have the actual cash to maintain it as a private residence. He sharecropped it out and turned it into a club instead. Back then, Mar-a-Lago was Palm Beach's progressive club. It was open to Jewish members. What happened now? He loves Nazis. What happened? This year, in Trump's words, it became the Winter White House. It didn't, but he likes to say so. For a few months this spring, it was a splendid sort of bubble. The glamour of the presidency flowed in, but the country's curdled politics did not. It did. Trump visited 7 times. Initiation fees doubled. That's how curdled politics made their way in, according to a CNBC report. And everybody else, of course. Charities held galas and couples held weddings, and Trump dropped in on both. He mixed his new job with his old job, the table-hopping host of Palm Beach's elite. Big night, Shannon, big night. Trump said one evening in April when he stopped by Donnelly's table to chat. Donnelly didn't understand. She only knew it was prime rib night. Later, she learned Trump was talking about launching cruise missile strikes against Syria. Just throw that in there. While there were some warnings that this winter season could be disrupted by, there were some early warnings, I should say, that this winter season could be disrupted by the presidency. God forbid the presidency should get in the way of that. Earlier this year, 7 charities decided to move their events, some blaming the security delays that came with a party in the president's house. But there were still 25 big events on the schedule. Then Charlottesville. And the president's comments that there were very fine people in the crowd. In Palm Beach and around the country, his remarks roused a backlash. Suddenly, Trump's charity clients found themselves under pressure from donors and strangers alike. Online, anti-Trump groups asked their members to contact charities and urge them to move. Even local Palm Beach officials jumped into the fray. Can you honestly say having an event at Mar-a-Lago, given all that has transpired, is the best stewardship of your efforts? Laurel Baker, executive director of the Palm Beach Chamber of Commerce, said in August. The darkest places in hell, oh my goodness, are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in times of moral crisis. This is the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce. Days later, another chamber official apologized to Mar-a-Lago for her remarks, but she was right. Some members of Mar-a-Lago found that their friends didn't want to be invited to galas there anymore. By the way, are you one of those people who says galas? Are you upset that I say galas? Galas makes it sound, what do you think? Am I putting on airs by calling it that? Anyway, if it's at Mar-a-Lago, then we're not going. One former Mar-a-Lago member said when he was recently told by a friend. The member quit recently, and he asked that his name not be used to protect his friendships in Palm Beach. But just go ahead and do it. Come on. It's not the charity that matters anymore. It's the venue. I guess so. By the way, you don't think people will notice that you're no longer ever coming to Mar-a-Lago? You were a member, and now you're not, and they say, come have dinner with me at Mar-a-Lago, and you say, I'm no longer a member there. How are you going to protect your identity then? You might as well just put it out there, sir. Mar-a-Lago's 25 previously identified bookings fell to 6, according to a Post survey, that is Washington Post, survey of town-issued permits, public social calendars, and interviews with charities. One of the groups that stuck with Trump was the Republican Party of Palm Beach County, which has held its Lincoln dinner at Mar-a-Lago since 2013. Before this year, it appeared to be the club's only overtly partisan gala. Among those that left, the Red Cross, which canceled its Palm Beach gala outright, ending a 60-year tradition. Would rather not have it than have it at Mar-a-Lago. Another charity, Leaders in Furthering Education, switched to a new date at the Breakers and wound up in a fight with crooner Paul Anka, who couldn't make the new day and wouldn't return the group's $75,000 deposit. Just a little foray into the petty weirdness of that world. They need to eat it, meaning the cost of it, but he probably also meant something else. They need to eat it, Anka, who sang the 1959 hit Put Your Head on My Shoulder, told the New York Post. Just, I guess, for you youngsters out there who aren't interested in Googling Paul Anka, we make it easy for you. Thanks, David Farenthold. The news was better for the Bethesda Hospital Foundation, which moved its November 9th luncheon to a club in Boca Raton and had room for 100 more guests than it could have fit at Mar-a-Lago. The lunch raised enough money to buy a new physician training tool, the Victoria S2200, a $60,000 robot woman who gives birth to a robot baby. That is a super duper. Physicians need to know how to handle births. That's a weird one, I must say. 60,000 robot woman who gives birth to a robot baby. Man, I might have gone a different direction with that one. How would that have been at the end of Miracle on 34th Street, by the way? Well, I don't know. You've really outdone yourself, Chris. All I can say is the state of New York believes you're Santa Claus, and I tend to agree with them. Thanks for bringing us this robot woman who gives birth to, oh my God, holy crap. They colorized it. This is the worst. At the same time, I give up. Mar-a-Lago's calendar has already begun to refill. And here's where we get to the weirdos, plastic surgery ladies, I guess. The Republican Attorneys General Association, not known for its plastic surgery ladies, I think, booked Mar-a-Lago's Tea House dining room last weekend. We talked about that on the show. For dinner where some state attorneys general dined with top donors. How did they choose the President's Club out of all the dining rooms in South Florida? It's a historic venue, very close to where the AGs were staying, said spokesman Zach Roday. He said the group did not get a discount for being Republicans. The dinner was first reported, I thought it was a luncheon. No? Okay, it's a dinner, that's right. The dinner was first reported by the news site MapLight. Good, thanks for giving them credit. Excellent, well done there. Washington Post. The Young Republican National Federation, which hosted Villa in the white and gold ballroom. Oh, that's not a description of the color of the ballroom, by the way. That's the name of it, the white and gold ballroom. You know how sometimes they just name it for local prominent geographic features or whatever, or perhaps a famous person. It's the white and gold ballroom, probably because it's white and gold. Anyway, the Young Republican National Federation had never held an event at Mar-a-Lago before. Why now? Because he's the leader of the Republican Party, said Matthew Thomas Oberle, press secretary for the Young Republican National Federation. The Christian Broadcasting Network, whose chairman is Pat Robertson, a strong supporter of Trump, decided earlier this year to hold its first Palm Beach fundraiser gala for its charity, Orphans Promise. That sounds delightful. And not just anywhere in Palm Beach. Of course, the event was meant for Trump's club. Secure event date at private exclusive Palm Beach Winter White House. The charity instructed its event planner, according to documents filed with the town of Palm Beach. This event will be one of the biggest of any season at Mar-a-Lago, they confidently say, I guess. The town was told to expect 700 people, because it's a 700 club, right? Maybe that's why. Secure event at private exclusive Palm Beach, quote, Winter White House. I don't want to name names, but it's a Winter White House in Palm Beach. Can you guess where it might be? The network said a group of major donors chose Mar-a-Lago as its venue. Through a spokesman, Robertson declined to be interviewed. In two other cases, individual Trump supporters have come up with their own new events for Mar-a-Lago with an aim of benefiting Trump. So, like, he's not even seeking emoluments in this case. They just went out and created them because, gosh, we love Trump so much. These people are brainwashed. Florida conservative activist Stephen M. Alembic, for instance, is planning a 700-person, he's got as much as Pat Robertson, and he doesn't even have a TV show, 700-person Truth About Israel Gala, oh my goodness, at Mar-a-Lago in February. He plans to charge $600 a seat. He says he expects Mar-a-Lago will keep most of it, and that's fine. So it's not a charity, it's just, I'm going to have 700 people in at $600 a seat to learn the truth about Israel. I'm not certain. Okay, here we go. We are supporting our president who supports Israel, Alembic said. So they're going to go in there and say it's going to be one of those Israel is terrific because it fights Islamic terrorists events. So if you've got $600 and you want to hear that, I guess welcome to Mar-a-Lago. This is the Trumpettes part. The Trumpettes USA. They add the USA because Trumpet is a brand of baby socks. What? Yeah, I guess it is. Are led by Tony Holt Kramer, a Mar-a-Lago member who has turned part of her home into a sort of shrine to Trump. This is very sad. Also very sad is there's a brand of baby socks called Trumpet. And I wonder, does it have anything to do with Trump? That's funny. They had the USA. Well, we're going to be in... People will think it's sponsored by the Baby Socks organization and Trumpets USA. She has a dinner planned for January 18th. First, it was 700 people, just like everybody else. But now, it's 800, she says. 2 ballrooms and $300 per seat. The white and gold ballroom plus the, I don't know what, the fuchsia ballroom, whatever's next door, I guess, will be, the wall will be removed. If there's money left over. If. Kramer says. It will go to, I don't know, a police charity. Yeah, but she doesn't expect to have money left over after paying Mar-a-Lago for the room and the food, and that's fine. I don't think any president has ever had such a rough 9 months, Kramer said. She said the event, called a Red, White, and Blue Celebration for We the People, is drawing Trump fans from around the country and around the world. It's only $300 a seat, so we the people will all be there, of course. When the first ballroom sold out, she posted a photo of herself hugging the group's mascot. What is the group's mascot? It's her poodle. Of course, the poodle. Her poodle is the mascot of the group. Why? Because it's her group and her poodle. What's her poodle's name? Caviar Dew. That is to say, her first poodle was probably named Caviar. Why? Because she's a schlocky plastic surgery lady, and Caviar is fancy. So what kind of dog will I have? A fancy one. What will the name be? Effin' Caviar. That's what. And then Caviar, like her owner, grew older, and there's only so much you can do. And I don't even know if they do plastic surgery on poodles. They shave them funny, but that doesn't really count. But dogs being dogs, Caviar probably died. She went out and got another poodle and named it Caviar Dew. Because, why? Because Caviar, while fancy, is Russian, and I don't know the word for two in Russian, and neither will anyone else, but French, which is itself also fancy, like poodles, plastic surgery, white and gold ballrooms, and caviar. So I'll just throw that one on there too. Caviar Dew, by the way, I guess is pictured on the Trumpets USA Facebook page, herein linked, if you would like to take a look. Does she shave Caviar Dew into those the traditional fancy, goofy froof shapes? I can't really tell. Where's the pic? Oh, well, it just has the Facebook page. I'm not going to scroll down. And anyway, by the way, some photos, the photos she's chosen of herself really do highlight the plastic surgery very nicely. I don't know. There's a lot of, by the way, in case you were wondering, there's a ton and a half of plastic surgery going on among the men in Palm Beach as well. It's not by any stretch of the imagination limited to the women. And you can tell just as quickly when the gents have seen the plastic surgeon as well. However, there is still that weird disparity. Getting rid of wrinkles isn't as prominent an issue for the men, but they do their own. They do their own thing. Oh, I've just been brought here more production notes. I guess it's all out now, and your dog's name is stupid, lady, because there's such a thing as Costco caviar. Is this right? This is the Costco catalog?
Costco Circular.
Costco's Circular. Oh, well, look at that, though. Plaza Austera, farmed, though, it's not wild, farmed Bulgarian sturgeon caviar. It's like the cheapo Eastern European kind. It's not Russian, it's Bulgarian. And it comes in a 2-ounce jar, 3-pack, $199.99 delivered, by the way. After $50 off, you get a coupon. So there you go. You too can join the jet set Bulgarian style with a little bit of Plaza Austera caviar. Well, what else can we say about it? Really nothing, but you should go and look it up. Also on the page, by the way, if you're interested, a bison leather bifold men's wallet, a bargain at $99.99. And let's see, a couple of sleeping bags and sleeping pads. Oh, we may want to get some of those for the kids for their camping activities. Beautiful, though. Let's see. Oh, look at that. A 3-person infrared sauna, just $13.99.99. Let's see some exercise equipment. Terrific stuff. So exercise equipment, saunas, sleeping bags, a treadmill, and also a bison leather wallet plus caviar. Count on Costco for all your holiday needs and also dog naming needs, I guess, as well. So you can name the next one after this particular brand of Costco caviar. In recent days, to return to the article, Mar-a-Lago got another bit of good news. Big Dog Ranch Rescue. That sounds like a nice group. An animal charity that had canceled its Mar-a-Lago booking in August decided to come back to the venue. Lots of Nazi dogs out there looking to support the president. I shouldn't blame the dogs. One of the event's co-chairs, there we are, is Lara Trump. I wonder if there's any relation. Why, yes, she's Eric Trump's wife. To explain its reversal, the charity published a letter in the Palm Beach Daily News. It detailed how the politicization of Mar-a-Lago had torn its members apart. The letter was written in the voice of a dog. Woof, 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 woof. I love Nazis, said the letter. It actually said instead... don't laugh in the background. That's okay. Thank you. They had some genuineness to the Kagro in the Morning World headquarters audience is laughing. So I like it. It was written in the voice of a dog. It's linked, by the way. You can go and read the whole thing, the important excerpt. My furry companions loved the Mar-a-Lago Club and said they would only support us if we returned to our favorite yard, the fake dog wrote. Excellent. I hope they crap all over the place. Please bring your dogs. The fake dog, this is Lara Trump doesn't actually go out and get any yucky, disgusting dogs and name them caviar. She uses fake dogs. The fake dog called for a return to more tranquil times at Mar-a-Lago when charities that did business, or did their business, as the case may be, with Trump's club or on it, didn't have to answer for Trump's politics. Oh, look, it's actually, there is some barking in here. What does it say? Oh, Lara, you card. After all, get it? The fake dog wrote, charity and politics should never be mixed. And yet, of course, that's all Trump does, but whatever the effing F. Nothing matters. And I'm going to jump out the window of Kagro in the Morning World headquarters. It's only on the second floor. Don't worry about it. After all, I want to kill myself. This really is terrible. What a bad development that is. But okay, Lara Trump was never going to stray far from Mar-a-Lago. That's probably one of the least important items of the year. But David Farenthold wrote it, and I like David Farenthold, and it was fun, and we got to make good jokes about it and use up the bulk of our remaining time. There's a lot more out there. Thursday, a more substantive show. I hope to be able to put together a Friday show as well. We'll dive into some of the stories that have been waiting in the wings, important stuff on Trump, Russia, and it's out there. And let's see. You know what? Let's throw this thing in there. The Al Franken thing continues to run away from us with the new allegations currently surfacing. But there were some interesting developments over the weekend that I did not bring up and need to be on the record. Like I said, I'm not sure who to trust in all this. And it's certainly begun to look very fishy if you're inclined to believe people who have put together some plausible and some less plausible theories about what might really be behind the accusations, particularly from Leanne Tweeden. But there's still no explanation for this other woman as far as I know. But the Leanne Tweeden thing continues to develop into a very weird situation. For one thing, I happened across a tweet at the end of last week from a guy who tweets as the Tabasco with two B's in there, the Tabasco. And he claims, strange, I was Al Franken's escort officer. And just to be clear, in this situation, we're talking about military escort officer for his USO tours. I don't remember any of this except that there was a lot of good-natured joking in a crowded room. I was with him the entire time on base. He had an escort on every base during waking hours. I even stayed with him in the bathroom, which is not necessarily a super exonerating thing to say when you're talking about sexual harassment charges. But his point is that he didn't see anything untoward going on there either. If I saw anything that was inappropriate, it was my job to report it. By the way, I am an independent And he then throws in there, who did Leanne vote for? And we don't know for sure, but we can be I think we can probably surmise that she was a Trump voter. Anyway, let's see, a few other items related to that. There was also a very interesting thread, and again, I don't know how to evaluate it, and this stuff is beyond me. I understand what they're saying, but I can't check it for myself. I don't know what I'm doing in this area of technology. But a Twitter denizen known as Dipswitch Dan had this to say about the photos that were surfacing about with Al Franken and Leanne Tweeden, saying about that Senator Franken photos, the EXIF data, EXIF, which I don't know what that actually means, but it's the metadata that gets stamped into digital photographs these days. That is, he says, the stuff cameras stamp on the digital version of files. It protects, among other things, the copyright of the photographer by literally stamping the date on when the snap was taken. It also records the last time a photo was modified, so you can see what they're sort of getting at in this one. It sounds like, according to this person who appears to be something of an expert in all of this, that there's been some modification of this photo and that it was in unknown hands, but the data should be able to tell us who took the picture and when, and in fact it does, and it appears that the photo was originally taken by the camera itself is a model that is issued to combat photographers in the Air Force, and you should be able to tell between that and the stamps left behind by Photoshop, including the particular version of and license number of the Photoshop that was used to do some work on the pictures, should lead you to an individual at some point to whom this stuff is registered. But some very interesting points. And again, it gets to like conspiracy theory level stuff, but taking a look at the way the shadows fall in the photo, where the infamous photo of Franken allegedly groping Tweeden, he casts a very clear shadow on the wall behind them, but Tweeden does not, and that's a little odd and disconcerting. But also, just to sort of make long story short on this thing, because most of the tweets appear to have been moved to another place. I'll have to see if we can collect them somewhere else, so you can review them yourself. But the long story short on this is they were trying to say that the photo was at some point stamped as having been manipulated by Photoshop, and the date on which it was done was not 2006 when the event allegedly happened, but rather 2009 when, and in fact, the day in July of 2009, I believe it is, when they finally got around to, or they finally got Norm Coleman to concede that he had lost the race to Al Franken. The day Al Franken finally was going to become entitled to his seat in the Senate, this photo was manipulated, and apparently then the claim is that someone's been sitting on this allegedly manipulated photo for years, but beginning on the very day on which Al Franken became a senator. And they've been waiting for whatever reason to drop this news. Why they pick now? Well, I guess maybe the shower of accusations, but they weren't lacking for Democrats and all this at all. Of course, the big backlash started once again with Harvey Weinstein, who they tried to claim was Democratic enough to tar the entire party, but I guess they figured they'd roll this thing out. That's the accusation. Anyway, I'll include some links to Dipswitch Dan's tweets so you can piece the story together for yourself. In the meantime, it is time to hand the microphone over to Justice for his second rollout of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Let me give you, I've finally got some time here to announce on what's coming up here today. Let's see, he says, I'll be serving up a cornucopia of abundance in the Front Cafe with all the news that's fit to read and, in this reporter's opinion, along with spirited discussions at the chef's table. All of those three things, titles of the segments of his show, in case I didn't make it clear with my read. The American Petroleum Institute says black people get sick from methane, carbon monoxide, lead, and hydrogen sulfide because of bad genetics. Yow. Try defending that one. There's more. We'll get to it after this brief announcement.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
More stories coming up with Justice right after this. The average 1% household is $2.6 million richer this past year, and Jeff Sessions gave cops a $78 million bribe to harass and attack immigrants. They'll be taking their break and then moving from Front Cafe to the chef's table, and all these fantastic stories on Justice's program next.